here again, and you will have noticed already that I haven't got my act together to buy a proper microphone, and I'm still holding a shitty little phone on our walk around this place. Terrible, eh? Anyway, the last little chat that I put out, I think was New Year's, when there was all this flap about weird drones and mist and all the rest of that stuff. Prior to Trump getting in and the absolute shit show that's turned out to be, of course, predictably enough, but yet, there were so many people out there in his base that were desperately hoping that something might change. I guess in some ways it did. We're seeing this real backlash against what was termed the sort of woke outlook, which is something, I guess. We'll have to see how that lands, what becomes of that. I suppose the thing about that is it's kind of infantile, because all we can do is take pleasure in other people's annoyance, really, where that's concerned. It's just a passing of banners, isn't it? It's just in between two camps, each belligerently opposed to one another. None of us really formulating a plan ahead, apart from, I don't know, those guys don't like me. But of course, that's all part of that whole plan, isn't it? The whole setup. The thing we're looking at, and it's becoming increasingly obvious to people going through this cycle of time and again. So you get a leadership proposing all of these ideas and solutions to the perennial issues, and it seems that as soon as they get into any form of power at all, they are compromised. I think in Trump's case, he's always been compromised. He got involved with the mob in New York, and that's haunted him for the rest of his life. Also, I suppose, there's that kind of sort of belligerent narcissism that he encapsulates, whereby that kind of personality can always be very easily manipulated by people that flatter him. So, particularly if you're dealing with things on a global and pseudo-religious template as well, let's say that you can be part of this great unravelling of the wonderful plan for God's creation through Israel. Of course, we're seeing all of that playing out now, and what is remarkable, and I kind of have to pinch myself from time to time, is thinking back in 2019 when I was unceremoniously booted out of polite society, how the whole narrative that I was just prodding at has become so widespread now. So many people are talking about this. Back then, even having a sort of tenuous connection to thinking in a negative light about the chodes and pee-hole, as some people describe it, would have you thrown out. Now everybody's onto it. You've even got so-called AI spitting out 272,000, not the 6 gazillion. And being almost immediately lobotomized for having done so. That's hysterical. So you've got the new reformed AI model, which is swung fantastically in the other direction, and singing the praises of beautiful Israel, the beautiful Israeli people, after having gone through like a Hitler stage. That is hysterical. But of course the problem is the cat is out of the bag. You know? Now you have people talking about wooden doors with glass windows that swing outwards. Now you have people talking about Russians knocking holes in the top of shower blocks, lining them with wood so they appear like something else. You've got them talking about chimneys that lead nowhere, made by the same people. People might discuss Prussian blue, despite the valiant efforts of Wikipedia to downplay the importance of Fred Leuchter and the Leuchter report and the stuff going on with Zundel, the Zundel trial, which in many ways put the nail in the coffin. But of course, that's all been stuffed into the archives, so you can barely get to see that anymore. People can track the original BBC World Service broadcast, which was broadcast in Yiddish in 1942 or 1943, I believe, where the rumours originated, the rumours that went on into the camps themselves. And they can see how the story was precipitated, and also how useful it was at the end of the war to be able to cover up the atrocities of Dresden, Cologne, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the horrors of the Rhine meadows, death camps, the real atrocities of the beautiful and victorious Allies. What a convenient thing to do, to be able to pick up the thread of an existing story and rumour and inflate life into that. So you have the US troops going into Dachau, and manufacturing tin shower heads and parading the locals before shrunken heads from the Congo and fake human skin lampshades and dubious bars of soap, which turn out, of course, to be bars of soap. They really did try valiantly to push that narrative, and they even employed the filmmaker Wilder from Hollywood, and they had the master of horror, Hitchcock himself, who was brought in to create the dramatic reels that we were also nauseated by and traumatized by as children. And obviously, you know, what awful sights. It's not really until you start to dig into that you find out that what they were showing you, tragic and awful and inhuman as that was, they didn't tell you what you were actually looking at. Typhus and dysentery. In many instances, train loads of returning Wehrmacht troops from the east who were diseased, starving, locked into cattle trucks to die, and then they were pulled out. Clothes were stripped off them, and they were put into mounds of bodies, and freshly ironed, clean, stripy pyjamas were put next to them. to help with the story. And the story did very, very well, of course, to the extent that completely lost their shit over it. And they never questioned themselves, not once, what's it got to do with you? Why are you concerned with people that aren't really your own and that have never done anything for you? People that are actively going out of their way to destroy your way of life, your societies and your communities, and they'll tell you the same as well. You know? People like Barbara Lerner Spector, that famous clip where she says that they will be resented for their part in this mass migration into Europe, but that it's necessary to break up the monolithic, indigenous, white European evil people in our society. And you reflect on that and look around at your people generally, you know, sure, yeah, certainly there's a lot of badness out there, but also look at what we have achieved. The builders of, at least this time around, civilization, I think we've been through the mill several times, and again that's part of the secret. I think the Chinese have had their time in the sun. Certainly the Indians did, unbelievable as that is, after spending 6 weeks in the shithole of India, seeing absolutely nothing to correlate with progress there at all. Just the perpetuation of this kind of crooked, self-serving, hierarchical system over there, which one might argue has a precedent in that, you know, people are suited, perhaps predisposed to certain kinds of jobs and positions, but to limit a person's ability to be able to aspire and to climb. You see what I'm doing there? That's criminal. It's self-serving and it's greedy, and that's why you've got these same fat fucks at the top of the tree over there filling their boots. So nothing to make amends for. All these people whining about all the indignities of empire and the rest of it. Sure, okay. But look at all the shit we left behind. Infrastructure, roads, highways, medical centres, and there's nobody there that's bothered to look after it, to maintain things. There's nobody that can be asked to look after that heirloom, if you like, to make the best for their people from what was left over. I guess we can argue that one out, but I don't see the same things, the same patterns there as I saw in the West, where we were at some time great innovators, builders, engineers, statisticians, mathematicians. Alright, that's not making up that. Broadly speaking though, makers, builders, co-creators, which is really, I guess, the remit we have, which is either through pumping out lots of little babies, or equally through our own endeavours, our own attempts to represent the beauty that we see in nature and in our landscapes too, and to be able to be thankful for that and for this experience of life, because it's one of these things that's constantly is what the hell is this? Talking with my own lad the other day, a little visit down south. We all kind of know in that sentimental sense. Cards, but in the broader sense. And yet, because we've chosen to this, we're not able to remain consistently loving people because of the constant confrontation with this adversarial. I think that it's important for us to, first of all, assimilate this. I think the words for the first email I ever did with emergence, I called it "Who's the Enemy?" and I think, in a sense, I was prescient on a lot of these things, and my younger self was talking to my older self, because my older self found out who that enemy is. How they go about what they do, and what the eventual end of that is. And I think, as I say, so many people are now catching up to that and experiencing this firsthand, particularly since this pandemic, where that was the moment when we started to so many of them, those who couldn't values of liberalism and the willingness to go along with an entirely authoritarian regime. So we lost a lot of people, but we also gained a lot of people with that too. If you like, they've become self-enlightened, and I've met so many of those along the way, and these are thankfully people that came out of the same, in brackets, scene as myself too now. I've been patiently waiting around for them because I thought surely person X has got to fucking get this. Surely they understand by now that we're not talking about just sheer belligerence, we're not talking about anti-Semitism for the sake of that, for the sake of hatred. We are in fact talking about love of our own people and our own families, and of our unique places in our world. And that doesn't matter whether you're here in the Highlands of Scotland or you're in deepest Peru. Your people, I'd always support that. Look after your people and your family. Thrive. You don't have to constantly look for conquests. You don't have to constantly get tricked by these pompous buffoons who promise you something and then they'll take it away as soon as they get a seat of power. I mean, what great portrayal that is for the MAGA movement in the States. And you can laugh about that and say they were fools to begin with, and yeah, of course there's that, but you can also see the desperation that people have, just their desperate hope that there's something or somebody. But as my friend Dan of the Fergan says, there is no political solution, and we knew that. all we can do is nuance and kind of support principles that, generally speaking, push in the favour of us and our people and the respect for all other peoples too. But self-interest needs to be re-established. As they say, charity begins at home, and we have this overflow of criminal sewerage, really, in many ways, from the third world, mingled with people who have genuine causes to run from where they're at, but generally speaking, people who have no intention of contributing anything to us, who bring nothing, who bear no gifts. And that's a common principle between the Celtic folks, as we would always be known for our gift giving. We would always be recognised by the ability to give as much as you can to the stranger. And of course people know that, and they've acutely taken advantage of it. So you have this suicidal empathy now, which is promoted by, oh God, you know, dare I say, drippy fucking white women and their simpy beta boys who always put the interests of others above the interests of their own, because they think, or they've been told, or they believe that showing your empathy, even though it's entirely false, is enough to get you some kind of reward. That's a scam, and it is our Achilles heel, and always has been. This desire to help, because we can help, and because we're the people who know how to fix, and we know how to build, and we're the people that know how to help. You know, it's like if you see somebody on the side of the road, and I did this the other day, somebody with a hire car and a puncher, and there's two young people there, and they're both just like stood by the side of the car, staring into space, wondering what you do. And what you do is you stop and you take out your jack, and jack up the wheel, take off the nuts and put on the replacement. But most people can't even do that now. They can't solve the simplest of problems, and that is endemic. It's so much a part of this culture of weakness and ineptitude, the inability to be able to do anything, to create anything. It's as though our essential raison d'être is being taken away from us, along with everything else. The makers, the fixers, the doers, the creators, you know. God, you look at some of the sculptural achievements and some of the architectural achievements, the musical achievements of our peoples, our wonderful peoples, you know. And you're supposed to be ashamed of that? In the words of Greta Thunberg, how dare you? How fucking dare you? No, we've got nothing to be ashamed of. You might have managed to pull that one on the Germans, simultaneously with Henry Morgenthau's plan to sterilise every German male immediately after the war. It came fairly close to fruition. And the seeds of self-hatred, which has been implanted so deeply in their psyche for what is, at the end of the day, a great deception. An overlay onto a mismanagement and a tragedy. And yet, that is the lever, that is the point. And I'm in this discussion at the moment with a guy online who's saying, Rob, you shouldn't be concentrating on this area. And I think, yeah, I know. Sure, I want to move away from that. But also, I see it, and I have tried to say this before, tried to tell you why it's so important. And it's because of the fact that this is the foundation myth of the 20th century, and it's at the heart of everything. So when you think of an icon of evil and darkness, there's only one person you think of. So when you think of injustice and outrage, there's only one incident and time that you think of. This is all manufactured. As a consequence, you don't look at the Holodomor, you don't look at the 10 million in Ukraine, you don't look at the glorious Bolsheviks, you don't look at the, in inverted commas, Russian Revolution. You don't look at the insidious ways and mechanisms by which everything has been taken over from the Frankfurt School and before that. How all the institutions have been captured now and how they all sing as one. There might be some nuance, as people begin to look unfavourably toward the conflict in the Middle East, when they can no longer bear the fact that they're seeing children killed in front of their eyes and being told just to swallow. They have to just tack a wee bit, and that'll do for now. But the game is the same. Always was, ever will be. So where do we go? Well, let's not blackpill the whole thing. We're seeing this well, we're seeing the plan playing out, because the idea is to get us also riled up that things happen. It pops off in the UK. They're already telling you in the mainstream media that that's what's going to happen. That's because they want it to happen. It's because there's always protagonists in this. There's always the setting up of the narrative, which is the one group against the other. But nobody ever looks at the third party and says who benefits. Cui bono. Qui bono. Cui bono. Anyway, Bono always does for some reason. So who benefits from this? And yeah, that's who it is. And I guess to wind up this peregrination, we can say that it's a good thing now that we're seeing so much more awareness of this. See that stone now? See if I can. Yeah. See that? That was part of 3 stones, a stone circle here. Back in the 1950s, apparently some council workers came round and they needed to build a bridge on the road just up behind that house there, and they needed some lintels, so they plucked 2 of those stones out, and they've become the bridge on the road now. I would argue that that's not a constructive or creative or imaginative enterprise, and I would argue that doesn't really represent the best of us. Tutty bye, people. Till next time, be well, look after one another.